Oh yeah! So, over the years, we made lists of tips, tricks, and other guides to help out new and old Rimworld denizens. Today we are going to talk all that, filter out the crap, and give you a top 100 list of useful tips to use throughout the game. Starting off, a simple one. Synchronize pawns' sleep, work, and play schedules. With few minor exceptions, you should always do this so that pawns are always doing what you want, like having set times to work, relax, and interact with each other, and of course rest. If you want a good scheduled timing for play, I recommend 2 hours after waking up and 1 hour before sleep. Doing this allows the pawns a chance to interact with each other or relax before the day is out. Take advantage of nutrient paste. I keep saying this, but I bears repeating. Don't sleep on the paste. It may give you a slight mood debuff, but no, it gives pawns a bigger mood debuff. Class 5 food poisoning because someone didn't clean the kitchen or learn their cooking through terrible YouTube tutorials. In the early game, if you can make one, use the paste dispensers. This frees up a pawn from cooking duties when you can be sure to always have, well, something good meals. Somewhat, you know? Always keep emergency battery banks. You do this by making batteries in a separate room away from the power grid, charge them up, disable any power lines connected to them, and then wait for that inevitable event. Randy has a habit of sending. Cook meals to save on resources. In the early game, you might not have proper refrigeration, but did you know that if you cook food that's about to expire, it resets all expiration times on the food? Could be useful in desperate times, like if a solar flare knocked out the power grid and all you got is a campfire to cook. Set up projects for inspiration. What this means, you have a good pawn who can craft, well, have them make the weapon or armor you of your dreams, of course, and right before they finish, stop. Just forbid the unfinished work and pause the order. Then when their creative inspiration hits, you now have a ready-to-make god-tier weapon. Just make sure the weapon in question is actually good. Combo your dining and rec room. Trust us, the pawns love dinner and show, and their moodlets prove as such. See if you have a really good dining rec room combo. Your pawns get the mood buff for having great rooms, but you save on building space with using only one room. Certainly a big brain play if I've ever heard of one. Speaking of using rooms efficiently, keeping certain rooms near each other, for instance kitchens and food store next to the dining room, is obvious, but also the crafting rooms near the storage area, the medical area near your base's entrance for quick rescues. Those little efficient time saves add up. Light up areas, especially work areas. Barring certain ideologies, pawns don't like being in darkness, and being in darkness also slows them down. So invest in some power systems and light up the base. Your pawns will thank you. On harder difficulties, you will be beset with a lot of illness. Invest in the penicillin during the mid-game, and set either key pawns or the whole base on a scheduled use. You can set a policy for a use once every 5 days or 6 days, as the drug lasts for around 5.5 days. So you could live dangerously, not recommended in swamps and jungles though. If you want easy food, keep an eye out for predators. When they kill something, just take their kill. Or better yet, hunt the possibly weakened predator animal. You can use drop pods as spare storage. A bit niche, but sometimes you gotta have that little extra space. A good use are for those junk gear taking up too much space. You can then launch them into other camps. I don't need 50 bows, but maybe they do. Greenhouses are a great investment. Year-round medicine, growable food, and of course sellables means you aren't at the whims of Mother Nature. Except solar flares, these always ruin many plans. Set all pawns roles in cleaning, hauling, and research to 4. If you can, barring Hurons, link to that role permanently. Having all pawns with that on standby means your pawns will do something when they finish their work. And hey, even if they aren't good at research, those little extra hands can help. That or just cleaning and hauling. Do you mind that if too many people are trying to research, your crap pawns could be taking up the table while the good pawn is wandering about? So something to keep in mind. Crypto sleep caskets can be used to deal with pawn's grief. Time to grieve still passes when it's stasis, so just put them in and pull them out when they are over it. Using biosculptors for the same reason helps, since hey, you get them out of the picture for some time without having a mental freakout. When making your base, try for at least 3 tile-wide corridors. Not only do they look good, but in case of raids inside, you won't have a bunch of terrible bottlenecks to take down your pawns. You don't need corners to actually make rooms. Could save you on important space, and now you could put in there placed turrets or plant pots or maybe even a wall. Wait, didn't I do this? Rich soil early on is a lifesaver when starting out. Look for good patches of the stuff for important crops like medicine and corn, which is good for food. Setting up farms with the stuff from the get-go can save huge headaches. I know it's a beginner tip, but it's worth mentioning. Pick the right materials. Wood is fine early game, but when you can replace with stone, do it. Fire can and will ruin your day if you have an all-wood base. Don't use stone for doors within the base, especially for medical areas. Using it for outer wall doors is fine though, just remember how slow stone doors are, even if they are auto doors. Conserving power might be a good idea. Check any power-using buildings you aren't using and switch them off. This is especially important in the early game when power generation isn't exactly the best. Corpses can be useful beyond butchering for meat. Meat-eating animals can use them for their own food, though make sure rotting corpses don't stink up the place. Seriously, not a good thing to have your animals ending up with lung rot. Sterile tiles should always be put in the kitchens and research rooms, not only for obvious cleanliness bonus for kitchen work, but cleanliness boosts research. Making sense. Always have your workspace clean. In the early game, when you don't have a lot of building material, look for ancient beds. Pawns can sleep on them, and they aren't half bad for bedding. That's been exposed to the elements for who knows how long. When building a mountain base, try and set up an open spot within it to allow pawns their outdoor need, barring, of course, any dwarf fortress-inspired ideologies. Now, if you build beds, don't make them out of stone. They actually provide less rest rates, making them inferior to metal or wooden beds. However, if you want to make prison beds out of them, you could in order to help prevent prisoners from rioting. Can't riot when they're napping after all. For the love of Randy's sweet smile, please don't put the butcher table into a kitchen. You will get sick since butcher tables provide filth to the room. Best thing to do, keep it separate from the kitchen in a different room, preferably near the corpse's storage or in the corpse storage room if you don't mind. Pawns constantly seeing dead bodies. Prisoners actually are more likely to be recruited if the prison is nice. A potted plant and maybe a statue can go a long way. Granted, removing legs from a prisoner do prevent prison riots, but will take longer to recruit given they can only crawl around. Even if there was a riot, should be easier to deal with them. To remove their legs, install peg legs and then remove them. Save components until you can at least make a fabrication bench. Until then, you will have to ration for any building breaks, saving around 15 to 20 components until you can make a fab bench. Nothing more depressing than researching fabrication, and then you can't even make the bench. If you have a wind turbine, make a growing zone in its path. Trees prevent it from working, but normal plants don't. Otherwise, pave the area to prevent the growth. Solar panels also don't block, so you can combo the power gain. Gold is actually wasteful when trying to make furniture art, though gold tiles does provide the best beauty to cost flooring, though even this is a bit of a waste. Best to save gold for advanced components. Raiders don't care if you have fine flooring and walls when you could have had a charge rifle to fry them with. Pawns who are greedy, abrasive, and jealous make terrible nobles, doing less work and becoming more demanding. Ascetic pawns don't make demands and keep all royal benefits. My suggestion for the more demanding royals, well, burning alive is right now, but hey, you do your own revolution your way. When a siege comes down, sometimes it's better to wait for them to get their supplies down. Even make a mortar if you don't have one to take. Keep in mind they might bombard your base during this, but you know, free stuff, potentially. Devil Strand clothing is some of the best mid to late game gear. Due to their durability and fireproofness for non-combat pawns, a Devil Strand duster can be a good alternative to more expensive power armor. It's usually the best idea to ally with Imperials even if you don't do the royal quest. Being able to call for their help as allies or even have them randomly show up can make or break some endgames. Raiders tend to focus on outdoor items than doors and walls if they can help it. Keep important things like crop fields and power generators within some kind of walls to slow them down or have them pick out other targets. If you are raiding, if you see turrets, try and aim for their batteries or generators. This way you don't have to fight the turret, and deactivating them means you can take them for yourself if you wish. Okay, seriously, have to repeat myself on this one. Never put turrets next to each other, since turrets have a habit of exploding. What do you think happens when you have a line of turrets? Best way to have a turret lineup is turret, wall, turret, wall, turret, wall, turret, wall, as walls can block explosions. Even a single tile wall can block the neighboring turret going off, preventing a real catastrophe in the middle of a fight. Don't have a crematorium? Molotovs are a good, cheap alternative. Set up a small stone room with corpses and throw the Molotov in and lock the door. Or just send corpses away via drop pods, deliver them onto your allies, enemies, whatever. Feed them to your rat army. Resurrect mech serums are great, however, the longer a corpse has been out, the more likely the pawn will get problems when brought back. Desiccated corpses can't come back either. If you plan to try and bring a pawn back, put the corpse into the freezer or a sarcophagus in a cold storage room to slow down all decay. Keep a good supply of EMP grenades or grenade launchers. Trust me, when you have mechanoids knocking on your door, having the ability to stun them even for a moment can make or break a colony. Keep a supply of smoke leaf for emergencies, as smoke leaf is a recreational drug. It can be used to calm a stressed pawn. Same with beer, just don't have them on a schedule to develop addictions, or if you want to schedule, check their safe interval timing, though this could cause health complications down the line. Insanity and shock lances can be used on mechanoids, something not everyone knows and can turn the tide of any battle. Just doesn't work on boss mechanoids though. Balance, of course. Keep some on standby to pick off big targets, both mechanoid or not. Pawns will consider clothing of 50% and lower to be tattered, and get a mood debuff. Setting a clothing policy to only wear clothing of 51% and higher will have them automatically take off and switch the clothing out. From there, you can just burn or drop pod the clothing to another faction for a bit of rep. If you have a pawn having a mental break you don't want, you can arrest them and bring them to a jail cell. Then you just let them go. They will instantly rejoin your colony. Then also works if you want to recruit and indoctrinate someone. Set up turrets behind walls of your outer walls. The reason sappers instinctively avoid them, and if you get a drop pod raid, then those turrets might target them before you send everyone else at them. Good stuff. Want to train your doctors? Well, aside from totally legal organ donation programs, draining hemogen from prisoners, easy to do and can help keep doctors busy with training. Only problem, will go through a lot of medicine if you aren't careful. The other option is beating up animals and healing them that way, or, I don't know, repeatedly beating your prisoners and healing them, usually just beating living things and healing them. When you start out, take advantage of all natural defenses of your map. Got mountain? Build walls with them as the strong backbone of a base. Got a river? Use it as a way to slow down incoming enemies with turrets or your side of the river or snipers. Basically do art of war stuff to really mess with nosy neighbors. Diversify power. Wood-fire generators are great till you chop down every tree on the map. Every generator has strength and weakness. Remember them and have a good amount of variety so whenever one fails, you don't have a power outage. Not to mention, if you're running a bunch of wood generators, somebody's whole life is going to be spent chopping trees and hauling wood. Did you know that if you do the ship launch sequence, you don't actually have to make your own ship? Yeah, all you need is the reactor. Easier to defense on things by packing it with 2 layers of walls and just survive 15 days. When they are up at your leisure, make the ship and get off world, unless you die. When starting a new game, colonist skills you should focus on aim training or shooting. Yes, construction, planting, and medicine. The reason is that they are going to be some of the most important skills in the early game. Cooking can be good, but not as important thanks to the nutrient paste. But if you do a start without the ability to make one, then cooking is priority to prevent food poisoning. As for research, it's kinda in the middle, as you don't need a dedicated one to early, but having one is pretty nice. I recommend not starting with a dedicated researcher and waiting to find the right one, as having all hands working on your starting builds is a bit more important than researching too many things. All the other skills can be secondary choices, but hey, if you want a colony of nothing but animal rancher researchers, be my guest. When it comes to doctors, always have at least 2 colonists in the colony who can do medical skills at a good level, both to allow each other to install bionics, and also in case one doctor has suddenly come down with a case of explosion in the lung. Don't ever look at a colonist's skills alone. A trait can make or break a pawn unless you want to expand more resources or effort to keep them. Plus, low skills but passion can overtake a pawn with great base but no passion. Still, as far as storytelling, you can try and make any pawn with any trait work, but usually it's best to perhaps send the pyromaniac out of the colony before he burns the chem fuel stash, boomalope / mortar shell storage room. Oh no. When you're working on a defensive line, clear up any rocks and trees in the line of your pawn's fire. That's because all that stuff can provide cover for enemies, not really a good thing for them to use against you for obvious reasons. Don't sleep on flooring. The extra penalty for walking on non-flooring adds up. Plus, not exactly a good beauty bonus to only have dirty ground. Try for basic wood and carpeting in your base, and outside you can use stone tiling or even just basic paved tile for a neutral look. During Manhunter Pack attacks, just stay inside. Sure, you might want to prove your defenses are great, but if they have greater numbers, they will wreck your colonists and defenses. Discretion is the better part of valor. Plus, if you are lucky, an enemy raid will show up and now they have to worry about an army of Cujos on them. Don't be afraid to call for help from allies. Sure, they might not send too many troops, but even an extra troop can distract and help in a big fight. And regaining any relation is pretty easy via drop-podding supplies to them if you survive. If you plan to do any big projects, make a storage spot with all the relative material. Great for stuff like building monument quests. Yeah, this can save a lot of headaches to stop your pawns from going halfway across the base to pick up one steel. Chem fuel shouldn't be stored in normal storage, it can explode. Recommendation: keep in a small stone room in case of fire. And you definitely shouldn't put it in a room filled with explosives and boomalopes and pyromaniacs. Disaster. Orbital traders drop your items at the nearest unroofed trade beacon when making trades with them. Make a single beacon outside where you want in order to ensure your trade goods always end up there. Oh, and a bonus bit of information: walls block beacons' signal, but columns don't. So if you want to hold a roof up outdoors, use columns. Got a kill box and want to make it a little more deadly? Oh, it came to the right place, you did. Carpenter would floor it. After all, it's flammable. Just drop a few flame IEDs for extra crispy raiders on your next barbecue night. Do remember not to have a wooden base, as fire doesn't differentiate between friend and foe and can drop 4 tiles and over walls. A cheap, accurate mortar is the combination of a boomalope, some chem fuel, your explosive shells of choice, and a drop pod. Yeah, drop pods can be launched to the same map. So say you've got a large army massing at your doorstep. Well, drop off some boomalopes and the flammable stuff. They shoot the boomalopes and set off a chain reaction of explosions. Okay, won't lie, it isn't the most efficient weapon, but darn it, it's a hilarious way to use the mechanics. Come on, turn on automatic building replacement. Seriously, back in the day, you didn't have this option. Take advantage of it. Your pawn will fix anything in their home area and replace them when things get destroyed. If you want to trade with the Empire but don't have a title to do it, host a royal guest with the title and use them to do the talking. Guess it pays to have friends in high places. One way to speed up hunting is to have your hunters be in a zone that excludes any drop-off point for the quarry. The kill move on the next target and let hauler pawns do the work. Also lets you mark off dangerous areas like hives or inactive mechanoid clusters. If a pawn is bleeding out on the ground and it's too far for a hospital, run. Set up a sleeping spot and turn it medical. Yes, healing there isn't gonna be good, but bleeding out kills and infection can be tended. Want to set up a good trap hallway? Set up doors in between every trap, that way pawns don't have to go through the hall to replace traps or haul bodies. Oh, and you could put sandbags in between every trap to slow down invaders, barring that hauled rocks in between. A classic tip, but a good one. Cryosleep pods can be a great way for pawns stuck in Luciferium, as you can just put them in cold storage and pull them out later. Use them like a winter soldier, combat only, pawns to bring out for problem situations. Cook meat first if you must use food stocks. Meat rots faster than vegetables, meaning during blackouts or EMPs, you can make better use of your supplies. When making drug policies, check the safe dose interval in order to get the most of pleasing your pawns and not having a colony of addicts. Keep in mind too that some drugs may have some adverse effects on a pawn down the road, so yeah, don't say I didn't warn you. And yes, we are reminding you of this again because so many of us screw it up. It's in here twice. It's a double tip. Plan zones and use them. For instance, have a normal zone, which is everywhere, home zones for pawns to back up, and deep inside zones for things like toxic fallout. This saves you a lot of time when things happen, and you might want to keep some people in one zone and some in others. Like, more combat savvy people can mill about, and those who aren't so good at fighting should stay at home or heck deep inside. If you don't have any Molotovs and plenty of items to destroy, Try using a storage area on shallow water. Water actually degrades items faster than just keeping them outside alone. If you want to use corpses without butchering them, throw them outside away from your base. Use it as bait for critters or just to creep out enemy raiders. Might get lucky and get some of them sick. Royalty implants cause nausea when the equipped pawn is EMP'd, which can be bad or good depending on who is doing the EMPing or who. Keep that in mind, however, when you use EMP weapons can be awkward during a mech invasion to suddenly have your main take suddenly drop down to a bad case of vomiting because someone EMP'd. EMP shells can save your life versus mech clusters, cause a lot of the time they will have defensive shields. One EMP shell can take them out, or to help ground or mortar squads depending on the shield of course. If you want some added ways to escape your base, making a protected hallway to the map's edge with inner turrets inside could be a way to have that escape route. You shouldn't be afraid to leave and abandon a base. If it's beyond saving, you keep your researchers and any pawn skills who survive. Sometimes that's all you need to restart and make a better base in a new location. Hence why having an escape route could be a useful thing in the long run. Pay attention to what your xenotypes can do and put them to work with what synergizes with them. Like Yatkin are great frontliners, especially if you send them out with a melee weapon and perhaps a new animal friend they find out in the wild. Genies for work inside away from the fighting, and high mates, well, high mates make everyone happy. Check their traits and figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are before giving them a potentially bad job. Avoid only using band nodes for mechanators. It only takes one solar flare for the whole army to turn on you. Make sure you have your mechanators wearing the mech armor since they provide more bandwidth that will stay with you even during a solar flare. Roofs can be built up to 6 tiles from a wall without a pillar. This means a room can be 12 tiles wide from the inside and long and long and long without additional structural support. Silly way to get some free stuff from traders, beer. Well, to be more specific, beer drop near Muffalo and then they get hammered and drop their stuff. Is it cheesy? Yes. Is it funny? Oh, you betcha. Something you should do to save a bit of time, keep doors open all the time so pawns don't have to waste time opening said door. Don't recommend this for any doors leading outside since you don't want rabid animals getting in, prisoners getting out, and of course nosy neighbors getting in and touching all of your stuff. Interesting quirk of tox launchers, if you fire them into a crowd of traders, they don't seem to mind. Well, they might if they pass out from the gas. This is another way to get free stuff in a pretty funny way. Just remember to actually save them, since if they die, they will still hate your guts, and rightfully so. It is a bit tricky to do, but it can be done. Fire can jump up to 4 tiles and over walls. We can take advantage of this knowledge by building 4-tile wide paths between large structures and fields, and improve further by constructing with stone. It's safe and it looks good when it's all done. The healing abilities of Luciferium cannot be overlooked. It's best to keep some in stock even if you hope to never use it. Could save a pawn's life. Yes, it's valuable. Yes, it's tempting to just get rid of it. But for situations like endgame countdowns where your pawns will be on the offensive, selling their soul to the nanomachines won't seem too bad when they keep going and going. If non-cannibals must eat human meat, preparing into a cooked meal will give much less of a debuff than eating the long pork raw. And on that subject, cannibals eating raw human meat will still incur a chance for food poisoning. It is, after all, raw meat. Running an auto-bong in your kill box can aid by impairing the enemy's abilities during combat. It's simple, effective, and hilarious. I suppose if you are cannibals, that's one way to pre-smoke your meat. Don't just let your enemies bleed out, strip them. Non-tainted clothes sell for much more than tainted clothes, and your pawns won't mind wearing clothes if nobody died in them. Honestly, I never understood this logic, but hey, if the pawns are happy, why shouldn't I complain? Build your prison with a hallway connected to your kill box zone. Prisoners that escape will take the path of least resistance, straight into traps, and solve themselves for you. That's the best kind of problems, the kind that do solve themselves. Help since turrets now don't target escaping prisoners. Got children in the colony? Set their work schedule to only be play. This also includes being educated, so not only will you have happy children, but also children who will spend time learning to become better pawns. The added benefit to having happy children in the colony is that colonists get a +2 mood buff, and I think it might stack. so everyone wins. Oh, and one more thing. Don't give children any drugs. Not only is that a pretty messed up thing to do, but because they have smaller bodies than adults, drugs hit them harder. That's why when, say, a dog gets into the beer, it gets completely hammered after just one. Selling flocks of chickens is a low-effort way to make money early on. They breed quickly and sell for roughly 30 silver each, plus they make eggs and can be slaughtered for meat. Releasing them from pens during a bad raid will provide a distraction for the enemy, perfect for small colonies. When eating raw ingredients, a pawn will eat 12 units and give a debuff. However, cooking a meal costs 10 units in food and keeps pawns happy. Nutrient paste is cheapest of all, but most pawns hate it. Still beats food poisoning, like it always say, but yeah, interesting how it is always much more efficient to eat food as food and not ingredients. Please do not put pawns right next to turrets. This is a mistake a lot of people make, even vets of the game, but when that turret explodes right into your favorite sniper's face and rips his hand off, it really sucks. Never be afraid to check the wiki either, seriously, full of useful information any player can find helpful. Don't rush to the endgame. Yes, it seems like a good idea, but rushing too far ahead does two things. One, you neglect easier research that might help by surviving the late game, and two, you will more than likely not have the resources to take advance of the higher-end research. Pace yourself and think about the now, especially in the early game. When it comes to hunting, never shoot into a crowd of animals that can retaliate into a manhunter, especially buffaloes. I don't know if there's hidden programming, but many stories that end with, and then my hunter got beaten to death by a buffalo pack. Happens a bit too often to be a coincidence. I think this is planned. It's usually easier to keep fine meals than lavish meals, as all meat or all veg meals are easier to obtain. They can keep mood up and get rid of old food. Seriously, easy nowadays thanks to all the veggie and meat meals to keep pawns happy and fed with fine meals. Finally, remember the Dwarf Fortress motto. Losing is fun. Starting out, things will go wrong. People will die. Events won't go your way. Don't give up. Learn from your mistakes, and while it's fine to save scum, I recommend new players not to do that, as part of the charm of Rimworld is to see how things play out. From bad moments come good and vice versa, plus all the stories to tell from both victory and defeat. I'd like to thank all the Patreons that make content like this possible. If you would like to donate to us and help support the work that we do, consider donating $1 a month to get access to videos ad-free and early drop content, as well as a special chat room in our Discord. See you in the next video.